Happy Monday, and welcome here to another edition of HuskerOnline Headlines. I hope everybody had a great Father's Day weekend. Spend some time with family, your dad, your loved ones. I had an interesting Father's Day, Mr. Steve Sipple.
Okay, so you went to Schwab Field.
Yeah, we
did you go to Schwab Field?
Here's
just around.
You can see the photos going up.
Look at
here.
your serious face.
We were a part of the Omaha Steaks Smash Burger Challenge, one of our proud sponsors of the program. Nick Hanley of the Husker Radio Network and I were a part of this, and we had to make 2 smash burgers, and we had all the ingredients, like a company had everything ready to go. My daughters, Kit and Carly, were a part of it, and we had to go against Coach Rule.
Wow.
And Brennan Stye. And he was very gracious to Kit and Carly. They had a wonderful time, but we took part in this. Dana Holgerson was there with his son. Matt Rule was there with his son, Bryant. Dana did not partake in the cooking. He was just there as a spectator.
He was there to spectate. Yeah. Look now, how did you do? How was your?
Well, it was a close loss. We lost. We made I called it the Big Red Breakfast Burger.
Okay. And what was your burger? What was it?
It was just a standard breakfast burger. So we had 2 smash patties with provolone cheese, some seasoning on them, over hard eggs, because I didn't want a messy, yolk.
Yeah, you don't like a mess.
Salt and pepper, bacon, lettuce, tomato.
God dang, sounds great.
So it was a great breakfast burger. And there's like a lot. I mean, Channel 7 was there. The World Herald was there, covering it. The World, it was weird. The World Herald didn't even write our, they wrote Matt Rule went against the team. They put the name of a burger in there. They didn't even give Hanley and I a mention in the paper.
That's okay.
I know we're not, but our burger name made the paper at least.
Are you was it hot?
It was. It was very hot, 90-some degrees.
Sean, you had to be tuckered
in those grills. But yeah, there were a lot of teams that took part in this. So I was a judge for 2 rounds, and I competed in 1 round.
So you tasted the burgers,
right?
God, that'd be fun.
These people, a lot of the guys went pretty nuts with just some of the things they did. Pouring beer on the griddle, and so one guy tried to put buttered corn and put buttered corn on top of his patty. Another guy made a pizza burger.
Oh wow! So it was pretty elaborate.
Oh yeah, I mean there were some professional type level cooks that kind of got involved. Brennan Stye, though, was with Coach Rule. Brennan's a great guy, and the 2 of them teamed up. Kit, my oldest, helped us.
That's Kit right there.
Yeah, and Kit was a part of the challenge. He's going to be a 6th grader.
Yeah, Kit's growing up quick. Now, what did Rule make?
So they made kind of a West Coast, they called it the pipeline burger.
Okay. And
it was a sunny side up, egg, bunch of toppings on there, and it was good. I mean, they really engaged the crowd well. Coach Rule in that setting is really good.
In most any setting publicly, he's really good, right? He'd be good at the public library.
You can see how he's a good recruiter. He immediately sees me and my family, goes, "Hey, I'm not here to see you," and he starts talking to my wife and the daughters, and just knows how to work it.
He knows how to work it. And by the way, so they had the West Coast burger. Stye's from California.
Yeah, he's a West Coast guy.
He's a pipeline. Once pipeline, always pipeline. So he's a pipeline member, and he's from the Anaheim area. I remember I mean, I hope I'm right about that, but I'm 99% correct that he's from the Anaheim.
And he doesn't cook in a restaurant, but he's got an involvement with Laszlo's and fireworks.
He does.
They've had a share of that for decades, him and his family. So
you had fun.
Oh yeah. Stye was great. Coach Rule. The crowd was great. Omaha Steaks, our sponsor, was there. John Simon, one of the heads of Omaha Steak, was a judge with us.
Good.
Just a wonderful deal to be a part of that on Father's Day.
You like to be out and about.
And we saw my dad. My dad was working in Schwab Field.
He was working
he runs the door into the elevator lobby to go to the suites in the press box. So we were able to see my dad working, but it's busy, as you know, for those games.
Yeah. He doesn't have a lot of time to jack around with you.
He was trying to man the door to decide who could get in the door to get inside. So he's the doorman.
Busy. You didn't make it over to a game or anything like that.
No.
I wouldn't expect that. That's a long day for you.
It's a lot of work. I mean, if you're coming up from Lincoln, And
to go to a game,
you can go to the afternoon game and you'll cook.
Yeah. Oh, I talked to people who did, and they cooked.
But I will say this: now the game at night starts at 6 and not 7, so it's that much hotter at 6 or 7. I mean, I feel like you don't really get like a true evening because it gets dark. It doesn't get dark till 9 something.
At 6 o'clock, you're still cooking.
Yeah, and the sun goes down at like 9:30.
Listen to us though; that's just baseball. Sean.
But yeah, great weekend with Coach Rule. I wanted to lead off with that.
Good job,
let's
Sean.
get into the opening headline here. Headline number 1.
Okay.
It is crunch time for Matt Rule and the Huskers, and you also added an offensive lineman. But when I say crunch time, Sip, right now there's one more week left to host visitors in recruiting on campus for Nebraska. Then it goes dead. The dead period this year is longer than ever before. There used to be maybe one more week in June that they could host. They got rid of that. There used to be a week in late July that you could bring in unofficial visitors. They got rid of that. So after this week, you will not be able to host a recruit on your campus until September.
So you're really trying to make hay, right? And spots in classes are, would you say, more at a premium than ever with the 105-man roster limit?
Yeah, there's two things that make these spots at a premium. Number one, the 105 limit. In a place like Nebraska, they don't have a lot of spots. The other thing is the money, the revenue share dollars.
Yep.
You can't really roll the dice and go over that amount.
Right.
You can't.
No, you can't. There's a cap.
I think for Nebraska and other schools, there's an urgency now when you talk to kids like, hey, you might have a spot and it's tied to the rev share, but it may not be there in a week. And I think every school in the country this week is going to have to use that line to make sure they can get a kid, because a lot of these guys are going to want to drag it out, but you won't see a lot of the lower tier, mid-tier, or even 4-star level guys drag it out. I think a lot of players.
Wow, that's a big change.
Will have to make a decision by July 4th.
So a big lineman made a decision Monday morning. Hayden Ainsworth from Biloxi, Mississippi, jumped into class.
Commits to Nebraska over Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm. So he can't. Now, the big thing is he canceled his visit to Biloxi. He had an upcoming visit scheduled
to Ole Miss.
Biloxi.
Not Biloxi.
Oh, that's not.
Biloxi's Southern.
Biloxi's where he's from.
He's from Biloxi.
Yeah, he canceled a trip to Ole Miss, wherever that is. Help me out. What's that city? Just do it, Sean.
Oxford.
Good job. You got it. Your brain's functioning after all that, son. So he's number 6 in the class, right?
Yeah, Hayden Ainsworth commits. Hayes Fawcett dropped that on 3 at 10:45 here on Monday morning, announcing that news that he's in the class, second offensive lineman to join the Huskers here in the class. So they're really kind of filling up the spots on that O-line, but there's still some more coming. Luke Sorensen, the tight end, is another one that you would expect to commit here at any day in the coming weeks.
Is he announcing June 20th?
Yeah, later in the month, June 20th.
Luke Sorensen. You also have Ryan Moret, the Miami interior offensive lineman.
Kason Thomas from Sioux City, Iowa, is a name to watch. Cameron Wilson, who's a commit to Syracuse, visited last week. I think there's a great chance. CJ Brownow did visit Florida State, remains committed to Nebraska.
Okay, 6. Do you like where Nebraska's at right now?
I mean, you'd like to see it get to 10 sooner rather than later, and then find its way closer to 15. I mean, I just think that's where you got to be, and they will be. Again, it's about the spots and the money and what your plan is. Like, you can't be aggressive maybe as you were before, because you're limited in terms of the spots you might have and the money that you might have. And
wow, it's different.
I think they've been very aggressive the last couple of years with what they've done in NIL, and now it's rev share, and what they've done in adding players. Now you're in a little spot now where you don't want to overdo it, because you might have to cut current players off your roster if you do.
This is, when you talk like this, you know who I'm thinking about, right? Pat Stewart. This is why you have a general manager. Right? I mean, the head coach, his duties he's really spread thin, wouldn't you say? I mean, he's up there cooking burgers. He's got to do PR type stuff. He's got
Pat Stewart wasn't cooking burgers.
no, no, I know.
Oh.
Rule.
I thought you said
No, I'm talking about no, I said that a head coach's duties are spread so thin. He can't necessarily worry about what you're talking about.
yeah.
Rule he's got his own team to worry about. He's got PR stuff to worry about. He's got camps to worry about. Those head coaches have such a load that I totally see why there's a move to general managers.
And you can't really bank on going over your budget of rev share money and assuming that NIL will cover the extra amount because it's no guarantee with the clearinghouse that you're going to be able to get all these deals through.
No, because you might think you're going to do that, go over the number, the clearinghouse dings you, and your player's ineligible, and then it's a mess for everybody.
Or not ineligible, they just don't get paid.
Or they could be ruled ineligible. I mean,
well, they would be ruled ineligible if they accepted the money.
Yeah.
But if the clearinghouse
right, I get that.
denies the deal and tells you you'll be ineligible if you take it, who would risk their eligibility?
I don't know.
I don't think you would. So then you have a mad customer,
right,
that is not getting what they thought they were going to get.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of layers to this and I think Pat Stewart and Matt Rule, they have to be so careful how they spend that rev share money because you don't know how much more you can go over that legally.
So here we are. I mean, and this is what this is. I mean, we're talking about a lot about the offensive line right now. Already 2 guys in, Rex Waterman and Hayden Ainsworth. And you feel good. You feel pretty good about Ryan Moret, right?
I mean, he's going to take more visits.
Okay.
We'll see where that goes. And Miami's involved still. He's a local guy, but I just don't know. Like, I can't see him being a high rev share priority for Miami. He's a center recruit. And if you're trying to budget a team, you're not going to overspend on a center.
You wouldn't think so.
So, like, what will the market be? Running back is the one where Brian Bonner, we have not really gotten a word out of him. Jamal Rule was here this weekend as well.
Right.
Those are kind of the 2 early running back targets that Nebraska has brought in. Now, tentatively this weekend, they're supposed to get Desvin Walker in as well, a 4-star out of Kansas City area. And we'll see if he visits this weekend and where that goes. So Nebraska still trying to get that running back in this class. The wide receiver position as well needs to kind of figure out a few things, but their O-line and their tight end appear to be in pretty good shape.
If I'm going to ask you a question that you probably can't answer. If that running back Rule wanted to commit today, would they take it?
Hard to say because I don't look at him as their number 1 overall.
So you have to know where Bonner is.
Yeah. And what's your budget and what's the numbers at and, where are things at? And I think a year ago at this time, your budget was whatever you wanted it to be. Now you have to be a little bit more careful with what you throw out there.
I hope people that our listeners, our dear listeners, I think there's a lot of intrigue in all of this. It's kind of complicated, but it's pretty intriguing now. The way it's shifted in this manner where you got to be so precise. Where you have covered recruiting in it, there were times when, Sean, they were taking guys that you pretty much knew were a big stretch, but they would take them.
Especially like when a first-year head coach would come in Nebraska. And I remember like Bill Callahan to sign like 3 quarterbacks in one class and late. Joe Gans, Bo Davis, and Jordan Adams.
Right. You could think of a lot of examples where that world is over.
Yeah, like you couldn't do that.
No, world's over.
We're like, yep, we're just going to try our luck. And but you were still under the 85 at that time. Mm-hmm. Now it got to the point where you could go over 85 with NIL scholarships, and there were no roster limits. Now there's roster limits. Now there's a budget. So like it's going to kind of make you be a little bit more careful when you start throwing out money.
All right, but they got their guy. They got another guy from Biloxi. Biloxi is not the home of Ole Miss.
Oxford.
That is Oxford.
He Hayden Ainsworth lived in Nebraska.
He did up to 6th grade,
and so he's got a connection here to the state.
Yeah,
but there haven't been a lot of Mississippi high school players that have come to Nebraska. Obviously, Malcolm Hartstog being the most recent.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I mean, you've got to go back. I mean, there's only been like 4 in the last 20 plus years. Antonio Reed, 2015. Byerson Cockrell, remember that name?
Corner, yeah.
2014.
Was he? They kept him at corner, didn't they? Did he play a little safety? Was he playing safety or
yeah,
corner?
he's a safety.
Played
according to his Huskers.com bio. I mean, he played some
corner though, guarantee it.
Brandon Jack. I just was going off with the bio. And Brandon Jackson was a running back from 2004, second round draft pick. But then before that, you got to go all the way back to Correll Buckhalter.
Yeah, Correll, we're not forgetting you. When I think of Mississippi recruits, I think of Brandon Jackson and Correll Buckhalter. Now,
Antonio Reed was pretty good.
Yeah, he wasn't bad. Couldn't run, but excuse me. But he was a starter.
Won in the Michigan State game in 2018.
Yeah. This was a little slow of foot.
But all right, let's before we move it forward to headline number 2, HuskerOnline Headlines, brought to you by the Billings Group. They're a trio of financial advisors made up of Lance and his 2 sons-in-law, Josh and Nate. Yep, sons-in-law, 2 of them. They're based in Salina because somebody has to be, and they serve clients in more than 10 states, including places that you've actually heard of, like Nebraska, Colorado, and Texas. They do financial advising and coaching investment management. Basically, all the stuff that you should be doing with your money, but you probably aren't. Also, Nate is a lifelong Nebraska fan and a longtime listener here of HuskerOnline. So if you ever watch Nebraska football or the stock market, you know both are emotional roller coasters. And that's why Billings Group is here to walk you through the highs and the lows. Billings Group's financial advisors by your side for life's journey. They don't offer therapy, but they are good listeners. Visit them at billingsgroup.com. Securities offered by registered representatives through client services, FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services offered by investor advisory representatives through RFG Advisory, registered investment advisor, RFG Advisory, Billings Group, and private client services are unaffiliated entities.
You got going.
I got it going there.
Yeah,
Monday morning.
You kind of stumbled out of the.
I kind of tripped out of the blocks.
But you got it going, Sean.
But I got a little fire there in the end.
You got it.
Didn't get a PR.
No, you didn't get your PR.
But it was good.
Yeah.
All right.
Mom had to console you.
Headline number 2. Valdon Saunier and the PPI recruits stole the show on Friday at camp. And it was a quieter Friday Night Lights camp because it was different. You know, Friday Night Lights isn't kind of what it used to be. But the coaches were still involved for the first part of it. And then the core coaches that had recruits, they joined the official visitors at dinner. So you still had over 300 recruits there. And the real story, besides Trey Taylor coming back, was a large group of international recruits from PPI, led up by Brandon Collier.
It's an organization.
A former overseas World League football player that played, I believe, for the Frankfurt Galaxy.
I'll go with that.
He began training players overseas when he was playing in the World League. And that has now led to where he's kind of become the middleman or the guy that really plays a factor in helping international football players get to the United States and be seen by the top college football programs. He brought with him multiple van loads.
3 van loads.
Of high-level Division I players. You know, like when I say high level, 4 or 5 of these guys were Georgia level, Nebraska level, Michigan, Ohio State level type recruits.
They stood out. So yeah, 3 van loads, and they had traveled. So people understand. They left Columbus, Ohio. They were at Ohio State the previous day. They left Columbus, Ohio at 6 a.m.
Eastern time.
And got to Lincoln in time to participate in a camp. And there you saw Gustav Hendricks Ross, who immediately catches your eye. He's a Swede edge player, 6'4", 230. And you saw him right away. Like, okay, that has to be a guy, right? And then all of a sudden you see him and Terry Braden's working him out.
Eckler, Dvorak.
Yeah.
And physically, I mean, he didn't have an ounce of bad weight on his body.
Didn't look like it at 6'4", 230, 4'6", 40, 35, 36-inch vertical, all of that. Now, we don't know. Now, he has offers from Georgia and Ole Miss and Texas A&M and South Carolina. We don't know right now if he holds a Nebraska offer.
Yeah, I think for Nebraska, the clock is limited. Like, you know, he's going to all these camps right now, so he's going to have to probably wait to take some official visits during the season. unless he jumps on something right now. But as you know, that dead period begins Sunday. So there's really not an opportunity to bring him back for trips.
Nope.
And they are continuing to travel around the PPI groups.
And this is a 2026 player.
It's 2026.
Yeah.
But yeah, then another defensive lineman from Sweden, Adrian.
Good luck.
Bicabelli was here.
Not
6'3", 290, had Georgia and Florida offers. There are some other intriguing ones like Jackson McKay out of Canada.
Yep.
He was the 2023-2024 decathlete champion from Canada. Has a Liberty offer. He's 6'3", 200-pound, strong safety, kind of a hybrid linebacker DB.
If you watched him at all, if you watched him work out at all, you were like, okay, he's got to pick up offers. I mean, he's a good-looking athlete. Right.
Then you had a German, Musa Bahaha, was here, 6'7", 375, and he didn't work out.
No, I think a little hammy.
Yeah,
he looked like he had a hammy to me.
And it's thinking about these kids traveled like 13 hours, 12 hours in a van. They only stopped once.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising at all that a 6'7", 375-pounder might get out of that van, move around a little too much, and pull a hammy.
It takes a lot of water to fill that tank, and you're probably not going to be hydrated.
Not sufficiently. That's a lot.
So yeah, he didn't take part. But yeah, they had a number of guys there, and last year we got familiar a little bit more with the international scene through Gridiron Imports.
That's another one.
Chris Adams.
Yeah.
Adamson or Adams.
I can't remember, but he's the one who brought us the big German.
And they did their deal a little bit differently. So they would fly the Gridiron Import players all into Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And they would stay at the Embassy Suites by the airport, and they would draw a 4-hour circle, 5-hour circle around Dallas.
Right.
They would get to the hotel, leave in the morning, go to a camp, go back to the hotel. And they would do that for almost 2 weeks, where they would just go back and forth to the, and there's enough camps within 3 to 5 hours of the Dallas-Fort Worth airport that they could go to a lot of places. PPI, my read on that is they're a little bit higher grade of an organization. Gridiron Imports was more, they were placing players in U.S. prep schools, and Princeton, Ivy League schools, where PPI, they're bringing the SEC Big Ten level type guys,
big time players. It was amazing operation. The German I referred to earlier was David Hufkin, of course, who's really, in my mind, progressing well. These are real guys. I mean, I know people, it's a sort of an unfamiliar conversation to some people to hear, wait a second, this kid's from Sweden and he looks like a player. Yeah, he does. He looks like he could. I mean, he's got all those SEC offers. I'm talking about, I thought Gustav Henriks Ross was the most impressive. I mean, they were really working him, right?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of what's he looking for, and he hasn't. I reached out to him after the camp, and he was expecting to get an offer. I think he was verbally told that I think they're going to offer you, but to our knowledge, they had not offered him yet. And look, Georgia offered him, so he's clearly good enough to play at Nebraska. It's just a matter of what's their situation look like with their numbers and what they think of him.
We also saw. Well, we should mention Valdine Sohn.
Yeah, and then Valdine Sohn is the prize PPI recruit of the year. He has been all over the country. He was on his official visit. His family flew in from Sweden to join him on the visit in Lincoln. Valdine chose to ride in the vans from Columbus. He could have flown in with Nebraska to cover a flight for him from wherever he was at. He rode in the vans, met his family. Collier from PPI stayed in Lincoln for the official visit with Sonier's family, and had a great weekend. Now it's a matter of Georgia and Oklahoma could potentially be on the visit list for him this week.
There you go. Now it's like 6'3.5", 320-pound D lineman. We're talking a lot about offensive linemen and D linemen, and in the case of the other kid, a rush end, or I don't know, edge guy. I'm glad we're talking about that. It starts, you build from the inside out, the old cliche. It's a cliche, but it holds true. Also, we saw Trey Taylor continuing to work his you-know-what off. right?
Yeah, Trey Taylor was out there Friday night, and I mean, like I said, it wasn't like a real glamorous camp atmosphere compared to the previous Friday.
No, it wasn't at all. There was, I don't know, Sean, I'm
50 people
50
watching.
people, yeah. But Trey, he just works. We watched him. We stood out on the field, and I mean, I watch him. That's hard work he's putting in. He's going to be here Thursday again for the final camp. But the way I look at it, Sean, for Trey Taylor, it's not just a show. He's getting better. I mean, these camps, he's here to get better, and he's working with Glenn Thomas. I mean, Thomas just kind of quietly goes about his business in a very dogged fashion. I mean, he just works and works these quarterbacks.
Yeah, Glenn Thomas is one of the more humble coordinator titled coaches you'll ever meet.
Right.
He carries a coordinator title. He's a passing game coordinator. He's a highly paid guy.
Right. Yeah.
You would never know. He's very low profile.
He literally pulls his hat down and goes to work. Doesn't make a show of himself. But I notice what's going on. And Sean, we talked about this out on the field. Yeah, he needs to be there, but he could just be there with his arms folded and watching. Sean, he's working. I mean, he's conducting drills. He's doing it all. He works like a GA almost. It's pretty amazing to watch.
All right. Before we go to headline number 3, HuskerOnline headlines brought to you by HelloFresh. And look, if you've never tried HelloFresh, they make it so easy. Every single week, if you'd like, they send you a box of all the ingredients. They post all the recipes, all the different ideas. You can customize how you want your recipes. They've got a ton of great summer flavor recipes now posted on HelloFresh. And you want those meals. Okay, great. I want it for 2 people. I want it for 4 people. Great. They will send you the right amount of meat, produce, all the seasonings, all the things you need right to your doorstep in a ready-to-go cooler. And you might only want 2 meals for the week because that's all you're going to be home to cook. Perfect. They can send you 2. They can send you 3. They can send you 4. We love HelloFresh. Love the ease of it. Love that they bring it right to your door. And they give you a recipe card to follow. Because sometimes you go to the store and you're like, what am I going to cook? I don't even know what I'm going to cook tonight. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea. My wife sent me to the store and she's like, figure out dinner. Well, this makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, you can't do fast food all the time.
Can't do fast food all the time.
Can't.
And you can't make spaghetti and tacos every night.
Hard shells.
The easy things that you can just do easily. This gives you this, like, it makes you feel like you're like a legit chef by the time you put these meals together. But we've got a great deal. If you've signed up for HelloFresh, make your summer enjoyable and delicious by signing up for HelloFresh at HelloFresh.com/Husker10FM. That FM stands for free meals. You'll get 10 free meals with a free item for life. That's HelloFresh.com/Husker10FM to get the 10 free meals and a free item in every box. HelloFresh.com/Husker10FM. 1 box with an active subscription. Free meals are applied as a discount on the first box. New subscribers only. It varies by plan. Thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring us here on HuskerOnline headlines. Okay, headline number 3. Talked to Dana Holgerson on Sunday briefly, and he was with his son. His son lives in Houston. Came up to spend Father's Day with Dana. Had an interesting idea. We were talking about the opener in Arrowhead Stadium and just how exciting that's going to be with all the Nebraska fans. And, it's going to be, and Dana made this comment because I'm excited about it because this is going to be the game that everyone's going to be watching. There's not a lot of other big games on that Thursday night. So the eyes of the nation will be on Nebraska and Arrowhead Stadium. But he said, you know what? Because I think long-term, this could almost be where bowl games are heading, where you match up non-conference opponents like a bowl game, maybe at neutral sites, versus the end of the year bowl games in December. That as the playoff now continues to grow and the transfer portal opens and coaches begin to move and take jobs, it makes it pretty hard to stage some of these bowl games in December.
I think it's a good idea. With every new idea, there's always people that are going to poke holes in it. The first question I would have is how do you come to the pairing? I mean, how do you arrive at the pairing? Is it based on the previous year's results, or
conference involvement,
or does the results of the previous season matter at all? I mean, are you just looking for matchups and you don't? So what, Sean, what am I getting at? I'm getting at this. You know how we fixated at Nebraska on becoming bowl eligible. So Nebraska had to win a certain amount of games, 6 games, to be bowl eligible. We all fixated on it. That's all we talked about. Is that out the window?
Well, now it's playoff eligible.
Right. Is that so? So I'm asking you, is that out the window? We wouldn't even, it wouldn't be this team is bowl eligible anymore.
As well as you expand from 4 to now 12 to maybe 14 or 16 playoff teams, and then the transfer portal, then the coaches leaving.
Right.
You know, it got hard to stage consistent amount of bowl games. Now, what drives the bowl game market, in my opinion, is ESPN.
Yeah.
Bowl games exist for ESPN in December to fill content on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays.
Okay, then now what do you do if you're ESPN if you don't have that content?
That's probably the elephant in the room, because ESPN needs content. They have Monday Night Football. They don't need a Monday night bowl game.
Right.
But they need a Tuesday game. They need a Wednesday game.
Yeah, something.
Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, can't put cornhole on there while the football season.
A lot of the bowl calendar is ESPN, and they can draw like 2 to 4 million people on those lower bowl games.
Yep.
And that's probably where the money is still. If ESPN's willing to pay, a lot of these bowl games will exist. But I do like the idea. Like last year, not A&M, but USC played LSU in an opening game. How much more intriguing was that game on week 1 than it would have been if they played on December 30th?
With decimated rosters?
On December 30th.
Yeah. Much more intriguing. But yeah, I don't know if this could ever come to fruition. And if it doesn't, are we just watching the traditional bowl season die sort of a slow death?
The conferences will have to make that decision. You know, the conferences are going to continue to have, but if the Big Ten and the SEC step back from some of the bowl agreements, maybe.
Do you see this revitalizing the bowl feel, or is it just, or it will even feel like a bowl? I like the idea, but there's 2 significant holes. ESPN is one, and the other one is, how do you determine the teams? Like, how do you determine the SEC
and the Big Ten created like a schedule agreement? You could play them at neutral sites.
Would you call them bowl games?
Kickoff classics, or jamborees, or preseason jamboree.
Now, Sean, leave it to me to overthink everything. But I'm just saying, is this? I don't know.
How feasible are these bowl games if they're not selling tickets? If people aren't coming to the communities,
right?
They get money from ESPN. That's kind of like ESPN actually owns a lot of these games now,
right?
Or like you apply for your media credential for like on ESPN's website.
Right. We're just talking about a concept here. And I'm asking.
It's a long ways away, right? But it's not a bad idea.
No, it's a good idea. It's just a concept. And I'm asking you questions that you can't answer.
Preseason bowl game.
Right. I like it. I like that concept. You just have to tie a lot of things together.
Could you not count it towards your regular record? Like where you don't.
Yeah. I mean.
But are you telling me like a pollster, a true pollster is going to still use that?
They are. Yeah. I don't know if you could do that. In
a world of automatic qualifying spots, which I don't know if we're going to get, that model would work. Because you could play these games without really worrying about the blood your teams take.
I wonder if Dana had heard something from somebody else that,
Well, I just think he's seen enough to know that these lower bowl games, like below, I mean, it's even hard to when Tampa has the ReliaQuest Bowl or Orlando hosts the Citrus Bowl, it's pretty hard to fill those games up.
Fill them up with the stadium, or fill them up with, is that what you're talking about?
The fans.
Yeah.
But if you played good on August 30th,
not hard to fill up,
where everyone's excited,
right,
optimistic,
right.
It's hot out. You want to travel in the warm,
right? Not hard to fill the stadium there at all.
But again, I think we're a long ways from that, but it's not a bad thought.
It's something to think about. They have to think about what's going on with the bowls. Now the bowls, my perception, I guess, is there's some that are still pretty good. I mean, we covered one that was good. I thought the Pinstripe Bowl was pretty well run, fairly well attended. The teams were engaged. I thought it was a good scene. Nebraska wanted to win that game badly. Boston College did too. It threw a wrench into it when Boston College's two best players backed out.
They're 2 draft picks.
Yeah, 2 draft picks backed out. That's the kind of thing you don't like. I do respect to Boston College and its head coach and all the guys, but if Robinson pulls out of that game, it's just not the same, you know.
And he was arguably the difference.
Yeah.
The control, like Bill O'Brien told Nebraska after the game, like, we couldn't move your guys up front.
Oh, those, I know. It's kind of a scary conversation for Nebraska fans to hear that. And it wasn't just Ty, it was Nash and Jamari too.
Well, Jamari didn't play in the bowl game.
Oh, he didn't play because he had moved. Yeah.
He was already at LSU.
Who played in his stead? I can't remember who they started.
Well,
don't worry about it. It's just a question.
Keona Davis, Riley Van Poppel.
Yeah.
Elijah Judy. I mean, they played all the guys that are going to play this year.
Yeah. Looked pretty good. All right, Sean, moving on.
Headline
move the train on.
Before we get to that, it's brought to you by who?
Wow, you always spring this on me. Larson Motors, Sean. If you're looking for a new vehicle, how about going for a new experience in Nebraska City? You ever go to Nebraska City?
Good town.
Well, you'll be going through there on the way to Kansas City here pretty soon. Larson Motors. Larson Motors is one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one locale. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram never has been easier. So start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people.
Real deals.
You're driving through there, aren't you?
Headline. Yeah, we're going to end of the month. We're going to go to the Dodgers game.
End of the month
in Kansas City.
Okay. Into the month.
Yeah. And by the way, Shohei Ohtani is back on the mound today. Throws his first. He's a starter today for the Dodgers.
Oh, really?
As a pitcher.
Shohei Ohtani
is coming back. So who knows what we'll get in Dodge?
He's pitching.
He's pitching today against the Padres. Tell me I know there's a lot of naysayers about baseball, but tell me that's not intriguing.
Oh, I'm not. You won't. I am not a baseball naysayer. I wish I had more time to follow it. Just watching the College World Series is fun for me. Baseball is a tough game that not everybody can play. It's like football. Not everybody can do that.
MLB has gone down to closer to a 2.5 hour game now, which I think has made a difference.
You love it, don't you?
Well, it's just good it's just something to watch.
You like the Dodgers?
Follow. Oh, yeah. But tonight you got Tatis and Machado, and I mean, it's one of the best rivalries in baseball.
100.
But let's get into what day is it, Mr. Sipple?
Oh, God. Today's Monday. What does that mean?
Mayhem Monday.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Where does Mayhem Monday take us on this beautiful June Monday? Let's go back to 2017, the week of Northern Illinois.
Oh, boy.
You had Northern Illinois come into Nebraska. And they were a quality group of 5 opponent, from the MAC, one of the better teams in the MAC. They had a history of beating teams, but let's not start it with the game, because leading into that game week, there was already a massive off the field, unnecessary distraction when athletic director Sean Eichhorst met with the Big Ten about taking Nebraska's game with Iowa off of Black Friday. And the history of Black Friday is since 1990, Nebraska has played every single Black Friday.
Really odd decision.
And it's kind of become baked into our DNA. Black Friday, Nebraska football. And Iowa, who was at one time kind of against it, started to embrace the Black Friday. So they loved it. Well, Nebraska, this Eichhorst is like, yep, we're going to move Iowa to a regular season game, not on Thanksgiving weekend. And instead of playing Iowa on Black Friday, we're going to play Minnesota on the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, so that was obviously caused a stir in the fan base. And then that's leading into a game against Northern Illinois.
And if you remember, Eichhorst and Mike Riley actually had to hold like a little press conference on the field the week of the game. I'm talking like the Thursday before the game on Saturday. They set up a little folding table on the field. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I remember it vividly.
And it was bizarre because when have you ever seen the athletic director set up a folding table on like the Thursday before a game to discuss the decision to take a football game off Black Friday for a couple years later?
Yeah, I mean, it'll go down as one of the worst weeks an AD at Nebraska has ever experienced.
And it got to the point where former president Hank Bounds got involved, and they didn't like this move. And I think they were trying to correct it.
So then Mayhem Monday, the mayhem really began. Well, I guess it kind of began there, but it really got heated during the game where they went down 14-0 to Northern Illinois. They went down 14-0 to Northern Illinois. And this was a team, Nebraska, that had been 3-5 in its last 8 games. So you felt uncomfortable, right? You felt uncomfortable going into that game. In fact, I remember what I wrote going in. I said, what this place needs right now, Nebraska, is some normalcy. Nebraska badly needs a sense of normalcy, which would have been what? You beat Northern Illinois 35-17. Instead, what happens out of the gate?
Get down 14-0.
Right.
And Nebraska did have a fourth quarter lead in this game at 17-14.
Mm-hmm.
But then Northern Illinois drives it down 6 plays, 75 yards to go up 21-17, which ended up being the game winner.
And then what happened?
And so at that point, Nebraska had never lost a game like this. I'm trying to think back to this, but Southern Miss beat them in 2004. That would have been the closest thing to this. And so Southern Miss I would put them a step over like a MAC program.
Yeah. It just didn't happen often at all.
You know, a MAC program with far lesser resources. Like Tanner Lee was 25 of 47 with 3 picks, no touchdowns.
Bad game for the quarterback.
Mikkel Wilbon had 3.8 yards per carry on the ground.
Yeah, they couldn't really get much.
They ran the ball for 85 yards.
Well, they were getting Nebraska's offensive line was getting manhandled by Northern Illinois. It was a huge red flag day. Now, what I was trying to get you to say, what was the biggest red flag of all, though?
So after the game's over,
right,
we're in our post-game media setting in the old weight room.
Right.
And Mike Riley did his thing. And then the players, and I'm trying to remember if the coordinators for Riley talked. They did after games. But athletic director Sean Eichhorst comes into the weight room and basically conducts his own little side press conference, which was totally out of the character for him. Totally.
Well, I've never seen an AD do that.
But
Nebraska.
He was the most unapproachable, inaccessible AD that I've ever seen at Nebraska. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. And there he was.
Peterson would be close, though. Steve Peterson would be close.
It was Eichhorst, though. He had his moments, but it was often felt contrived when he had those moments. And here he was, addressing us. And he said the reason he said he did it was to show strong leadership, which is if a guy is telling you he's being a leader, that's probably a problem in itself, right? If you're telling me what a leader you are, then you're probably not a great leader. But there he was, I guess, trying to calm the masses, but he had to know he was in trouble. He had to know it.
So this is Saturday.
They lost to Northern Illinois.
And it was by Monday or Tuesday, he was fired.
Thursday.
Okay, so it was late.
It was Thursday because I was doing a speech in Beatrice. And then it was over the noon hour, obviously, because that's when the speech was. And everybody was looking at their everybody had their smartphones, and you could see the faces. I was like, okay, guys, what's going on? Hey, they're like, you better get back to Lincoln now. I'm like, what's going on? Eichhorst got fired. And then that was it. It was over. That was Thursday. It was a Thursday afternoon over the noon hour. Fired. And then you knew then Riley's in trouble, right?
Well, then they have to go out to Illinois for a Friday game without Eichhorst as the AD. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, they win that game in Illinois in Champaign on Friday.
Right.
But what I'll never forget about that is Nebraska had a bye week, or like on that same weekend on that Saturday, a group of Nebraska people leadership level people, they flew down as friends of Scott Frost and watched him coach in Orlando.
Yeah, it started getting
so
weird.
It started to roll at that point. And then Bill Moose came in.
Yeah, Moose came in October,
the week of the Ohio State game.
Yeah, and you kind of knew at that point where this was all going, but it was kind of complicated, Sean, because as you know, well, I can remember it vividly. I remember being on the phone so much that fall, and much of it was with Frost. We'll just call them Frost people. And it was clear that there was no guarantee they were going to get him. It was tense. There would be times where I kind of want to be like, I want to feel good about it. Like, okay, they're going to get Frost. This will be okay. And then I'd talk to someone in the Frost camp and they'd be like, I don't know. I don't know if he'll do it. Then you just had all these like things in your head. Like, okay, if they don't do that, then what are they going to do? Riley at that point, by the way, was 16-13, but they had lost. They were 3-6 in their last 9 going back to the previous season. So you could know things were unraveling, right? Did you remember that?
Yeah. The way the Iowa game happened, and then, the defense played solid though for a lot of that year. And then they just fired Mark Banker. Banker wasn't a bad coach.
No,
good person. Players liked him. He's a dude.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just called him. He's like, hey, you're fired. And then they brought in Billy Devaney. Billy Devaney kind of ran the program as a GM,
mm-hmm.
and he had power. Unlike, Pat Stewart has power, but Billy Devaney had more operating power.
I think he did.
When you look at the framework of that era, and that was unheard of to have a guy like Billy Devaney kind of running the program with your head coach and that level.
I remember interviewing Devaney when he was sitting there with the depth chart in front of him. He was, I don't want to say I would just say he was making depth chart moves.
But he didn't come in until 2017.
Right.
And that's when it all went sideways. Riley had a 9-win year in 2016, but then he fired his DC. They bring in a general manager. They bring in Bob Diaco, as we can all now say was a disaster.
It was a disaster. I don't know, Sean.
I-course, so yeah, that week, it just, the way it unraveled for him that week was something I'll never forget.
It was mayhem. It was mayhem. You know what you do in our position? You move on pretty fast. You know how our business goes, where it's just, I don't know, people probably got a sense of it. It seems like we're moving 100 miles an hour even in June. So you don't really take a lot of time to reflect, which is why I think these Flashback Fridays and Mayhem Mondays are kind of valuable. Sean, I gotta tell you, I never really took much time to reflect because you're always just rolling. You're just kind of roll on to the next thing. You don't have a lot of time to sit back and think, oh, well, this could have gone to, you just don't. You don't have a lot of time. But a lot of stuff has happened in this program. It really started getting crazy during the Solich years. And it just hasn't really stopped much, right?
No.
Am I wrong?
No, and it's funny. We'll just be talking like, oh my gosh, that would be a good Mayhem Monday.
It's not hard to come up with things. Right.
So we're always up for your suggestions. We've done 3 or 4 of these now, and they've all been pretty fun to do.
Mayhem. That was mayhem that week. I would say the Saturday was the peak of the mayhem when they lose to Northern Illinois. And there's I-course. You're right, by the way, that the coordinators then didn't go to the podium. You would interview them in the same area where
now they don't talk after games.
Right. But back then they would do interviews, but not at the podium. You'd get them in the same area where I-course was. Cause I think I was talking to Danny Langsdorff when I looked over and I was like, what's I-course doing down there? I better get over there. And boom, he was doing interviews.
Yeah. It was like he didn't initially think it was going to be something. Then it turned into something.
Of course it did. He had to know. He had to know when he went down there, Sean, he had to know he was going to be engulfed by reporters.
And maybe he picked up on the body language of the chancellor and the president that things were shifting this way.
Yeah. And I think as a human being, you kind of have to feel for him. He had made a bad decision with the Black Friday deal. And now they lose on the home field, which to Northern Illinois, which must feel like almost the end of the world.
To a team they probably paid over $1 million.
Right.
To.
I mean, if you're, I love these conversations because it just kind of depends who you're talking about as to how they feel. Riley was 64 years old at that time, Mike Riley. I never got this sense that he was bothered by anything.
No.
In fact, Moose told me a great story about Riley the other day. The day that Moose fired Riley, he called him in and fired him. And Riley said, "You want to go to lunch?" And they went to lunch.
Well, and then Riley was going to the basketball games still. And
yeah, Riley was like, yeah. Riley said, "Let's go to lunch."
Well, I'll never forget that day he got fired. We were out there and he pulls up in his Prius.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey guys, I'm just going in to watch some film."
Yeah, just doing what he always does. And that's a pro now. I give him credit. Like he worked right till the end.
Yeah, you won't find too many more stand-up classier people than Mike Riley.
He was a professional about it. But when you're a 64-year-old, probably got money in the bank, don't have really any connection to this school.
And his family didn't really want to be out here.
Right. No connections. It's just sort of, God, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that just kind of another day at the office?
There's Riley pulling in right there in the old Prius.
Isn't that just another day at the office?
Look at this picture of the video.
Hold on.
This is him right after he basically got fired.
Well, right before. Or was it right after? Right before.
Oh, he's leaving.
Yeah. Look at him. He's fine. It's a weird business. Now, that's not, but it's not this is why I say it. Just individuals are different. Pelini wouldn't react like that. That's not how
Pelini would have burned rubber out of the lot.
Yeah. So it just depends who you're talking about. Pelini wasn't going to ask the AD to lunch. I mean,
wouldn't have been invited.
No. So it's just mayhem. We've covered a lot of mayhem, Sean.
All right. As we move on the show, odds and ends, headline number 5. I do want to give a quick plug. Your coworker and our friend Adam Carricker, he is putting together a football camp in Lincoln in July, on July 9th from 9 to 1. Amon Green, Eric Crouch, Zach Wiegert, Kenny Wilhite, and many others are part of this camp. I know it's almost full, but there's still some spots left if you want to be a part of this football camp with many of these great former Husker players. And a big chunk of the proceeds are going to charity as well from the camp itself. So check that out at thecarrickerchronicles.com where you can register. And it should be a great experience. But let's move it on as we continue odds and ends. A few things I want to hit on here. How about Matt Rule on Jim Rome's show talking about Dylan Raiola? Get us up to speed on that.
Okay. I thought the most interesting part of that segment was Rule talking about Dylan and saying he could have transferred. He could have taken an NIL deal elsewhere.
Miami, Auburn, A&M. Those are the 3 that were speculated.
Miami, Auburn, A&M. So what Matt said, he said he could have taken, now I want you to parse this. He said he could have taken the easy way out. He could have gone to a place, this is quoting Matt, where he doesn't have to do as much himself. I almost think I need to address this in a column. I mean, first of all, I hope people understand that Dylan has options, that he would be a very good quarterback in a lot of places, right? Am I wrong?
No question. I mean, yeah, he's a 5-star.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sean, you know what people fire back at me? SIP. His numbers weren't that great. I'm like, okay, yeah, his numbers weren't that great. I get that. His numbers down the stretch weren't that great. Yeah, it's a lot of projection, but that's what we do with athletes. We project. Why am I getting angry? I don't know. But because I think Dylan, what I hope people understand is there are a lot of programs, good ones that would take Dylan in a second.
Yeah, they didn't have a great identity developed on offense yet. And now they're going to have that with Dana Holgorsen. You have a legitimate quarterback, gunslinger, head offensive coordinator now that's going to put a system in that he has a proven track record of producing points and yards.
I just think it'll look good. And I believe in Dylan's talent. Yeah, I mean, I know I'm projecting. I get it. Not totally projecting though. I mean, we saw a lot of good last year from Dylan, and I thought he closed the season well at Boston College. He was very much in command, and you just don't have. You're not going to have an opportunity always to have a kid that looks like that. A kid who's going to have a very good chance. Correct me if I'm wrong. To be a first rounder.
He could be up there.
Yeah.
I think the key for Dylan is he has to when he gets rid of the ball quickly, that's when good things happen. But when he holds the ball, that's where things don't always happen for him. Or when Dana was here, he started him getting rid of the ball a lot quicker.
No doubt about that.
And I thought that's when the offense looked its best again, when the reads were quick.
Okay. I'll grant you that. They got to put more around him. Now, I think they have. I think they have. And so Dana Holgerson coupled with Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter, Ja'Cory Barney, I'm going to say Harburg, then with a protection and maybe even a running game. God, they love Emmett Johnson. I mean, they just love him. If they have the kind of running game that they expect to have, this should all look very good. And I think Dylan with what should be around him will look good. What Nebraska should be able to offer him a lot around him. Now I want to see it.
All right, let's keep.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, it's all there, and
I would think so.
Yeah, a guy like him would always, if he ever entered the portal, which he'd be a top target in the whole country.
Oh yeah, regardless of position,
because people are smart enough to know what the picture could be.
Right.
If they do it correctly.
Right.
Odds and ends, playoff expansion. We're still really nowhere near a decision on 5+11 or automatic qualifiers, whether we go from 12 to 14 or 16. There's a lot of unknown uncertainties there. Now the latest discussion is figuring out a correct strength of schedule model for the committee to look at.
How you do that, Sean?
So we'll see where that goes, but it doesn't, 2026, we may not get an expanded playoff. Like we might still keep it at 12.
You don't think they can get it solved by the December 1 deadline?
It's going to be close, because if they can't get off, if that automatic qualifier versus 5+11 debate continues, the SEC and the Big Ten decide this. Well, they both could have their own thoughts on that, and they may not get it figured out.
We'll see what that formula looks like. The other the big story brewing is Texas State going to the Pac-12.
Yeah, the Pac-12 needed an 8th football member,
right,
in order to be a part of the FBS. So why is that important? Because as part of the FBS, you are now part of the playoff structure. And the top rank FBS team, not in the Power 5, Power 4 conferences, would get a spot in the playoffs.
Right.
And I think for the FBS at this, or for the Pac-12, they're probably that league. You have Tulane and Memphis and some other teams in the AAC.
Right.
You have the MAC. But the Pac-12 is Washington State. It's Oregon State. It's Boise State. It's San Diego State.
It's Colorado State.
It's
Fresno State. It's Utah State.
It's probably the best collection today of the non-Power 4 leagues.
Yeah.
And UNLV, I think, would like to be in the Pac-12, but the politics of the state system there won't allow the breakup because they don't want Nevada to be on their own.
That story that came out that UNLV didn't have the funds to guarantee Mullen
$100,000.
The back end of his contract. Like
he got $6,000 or $5,000, and he was promised $100,000.
I just can't take him seriously. So yeah, so people just to review, and Sean, I just think a lot of people don't. There's so much going on in college football. There's so much change. The Pac-12 as it stands: Oregon State, Washington State, previous members, Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, Utah State,
Gonzaga, and Gonzaga's a basketball member.
Non-football. So you're, like you said, they need an 8th. And that could be Texas State, which I would think Texas State is thrilled.
And I don't know, like Tulane and Memphis might have been in the discussion, but the travel probably just didn't make sense.
Well, Memphis, I think Memphis needed 22 million. They needed to come. I know this because I read it. Memphis needed 22.5 million to join, and they couldn't come up with that. The Pac-12 offered help in the form of 2.5 million, but you're still 20 million short. Now, you said there's a FedEx guy. Sean, that's a lot of money. $20 million.
Well, the owner of FedEx.
Can he write a $20 million check?
He owns FedEx.
I guess the question is, do you want to do that?
He is single-handed. Like, if Memphis they almost got in the Big 12. And he made a promise that he would be the title sponsor of the Big 12 title game and provide all this money. I mean, they have the money with him, but it has to make sense. Going to the Pac-12 doesn't do anything more for them.
Not really, does it?
I mean, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point. And it's not the Big 12. I mean, you think about the last line of realignment, Central Florida getting the invite to the Big 12 over, say, University of South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
That was a major upset because 10 years before that, USF with Jim Leavitt, they were probably considered the better brand, but Central Florida had overtaken them. They got the invite to the Big 12, and it changed their university forever.
It did. And it was an upset. It still feels kind of like one.
And I was reading Mike Bianchi of the Orlando Sentinel this weekend, and they're in a really good position at UCF with their rev share because the new money they're getting is such an influx of cash. They've never spent it yet. So they are positioned to use the new flow of money coming in straight for rev share, where other universities have already baked in the additional monies where, they're spending all the money already. So to come up with 20.5, it's hard. Well, now UCF's getting new money they weren't getting the year before, and they're just going to use that money for rev share.
Well, Frost should have some speed on that.
Yeah, UCF's in a good position in the Big 12. The Texas Tech is probably the team I'd put my money on long term in the Big 12 with what they have behind them.
Think about what you're saying. Isn't that amazing?
I mean, Texas Tech basically just has like an oil rig on their campus right now. And it spits out money.
Right.
And pays softball players.
Let's face it. Frost, first of all, is lucky that he has another head coaching job at a powerful school. Now it looks like he's going to have some money to pay players, and I always go back to what he told me when he was at Central Florida about the ability to recruit speed there. And one of his hesitations to jump out of there was, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get the speed I need. His big quote to me was simple. I can just roll out of bed, go get a receiver. I mean, yes, you can do that.
But the physicality that you need with the speed in the Big Ten is different.
Doesn't fit Frost. And you know what, Sean? It took him too long to realize that. It did. It took him 3 years.
Oh, they went about 0 for 12 on wide receiver recruiting.
It took him 3 years to understand. I don't mind saying that. Frosty, if he's listening, wouldn't like it, but he stood up at the Big Ten media days between year 3 and 4 and basically admitted it. Like, we just didn't adjust quickly enough. You didn't adjust quickly enough. Wow. I mean, you didn't know. And so he completely went back on his original statement of, we got to make the Big Ten adjust to us. I wrote a column about it. It was memorable. I remember sitting there thinking, wow.
But then he adjusted his style to be more possession Big Ten oriented. I'll never forget when they go to Norman, Oklahoma, and they play Lincoln Riley, who was in the peak of kind of his Big 12 offensive run. They made that like an 8 possession. Remember how
it looked pretty good.
I mean, the first quarter or the first half, there was like only 4 possessions per team.
2021.
Yeah.
And it looked pretty good.
And it was a low scoring game where, it was like 7-minute drives.
But I'd say it looked pretty good.
Right. And they came out with like Teddy Prohaska playing tight end.
Right.
I mean, it's like,
dude. And I was like, Nebraska's going toe to toe with Oklahoma right now. And
Gabe Irvin's probably still running if he doesn't blow his knee out on that run.
Yeah.
I mean, he adjusted, but like you said, it was too late.
Too late.
They just weren't equipped. And
nope. Too late. How can it be too late?
But they're going to have the full rev share, which in Orlando.
Oh, come on. Come on now.
Now, Pac-12, to put it in perspective, a Pac-12 TV deal is like $10 million.
$10 million. That's what those teams are going to get.
And a Big Ten team's going to get like 75 this year.
It's another world they're in over there. But at least they have a conference, and that's good for college football, in my opinion.
All right. Well, full week of shows on Husker Online. We have camps on Thursday as well this week, so it should be another busy week, another recruiting weekend. But for Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan signing off here for Husker Online Headlines.